The wind howled like a wounded animal, whipping my face with prickly snow. Needles. The Arctic does not forgive mistakes. Do not forgive arrogance. She exacts a price from all who dare disturb her cold peace. William Carter fastened the last button of his thermal suit and looked at the sky distorted by the blizzard. Through the dense gray veil, the sun was barely visible, a dim, fuzzy circle that gave no light, nor warmth. The radio in my pocket began to crackle. Dr. Carter. The helicopter is ready. It's time to move out. He briefly acknowledged receipt of the message and took a last look at the expedition's makeshift camp. 6 insulated tents, 2 snowmobiles, and a team of exhausted scientists. The survival of all of humanity now depends on their actions. How did it all start? Carter remembered every detail, even though it sometimes seemed to him that everything that had happened in recent weeks was just a strange fever dream. At the end of November 2024, it was unusually cold even in winter. A NATO satellite conducting routine scans of the most remote areas of the Arctic has suddenly recorded an anomaly, a strange metal object buried deep under the Arctic ice. Initial analysis did not raise any particular concerns. It was probably another wreck of a Soviet aircraft from the Cold War. Such discoveries have occurred before. However, when these photos landed on the desk of William Carter, a famous marine archaeologist specializing in World War II shipwrecks, he immediately felt an inexplicable uneasiness. The silhouette of the object could not be confused with anything. In front of it was the silhouette of a submarine. And not just any ship, but the German U-boot, one of the deadly submarines that terrorized Allied naval convoys. "This is impossible," Carter said softly, looking at the images. "There shouldn't be any German submarines here." He immediately contacted the Naval Archives. The reaction was predictable: utter confusion. Official documents do not list any German submarines lost in this area of the Arctic. Moreover, the Nazi Navy never officially conducted operations in the region. 3 days after the anomaly was discovered, an international research team was established. 6 leading scientists in the fields of marine archaeology, military history, and biology, 3 security experts, and 2 pilots. The team was assigned a high degree of confidentiality. Information about this discovery should not extend beyond a narrow circle of initiates. Carter led the expedition. Before leaving, he was asked to hold a closed-door meeting with representatives of NATO and Russia's Northern Fleet. This was an unprecedented collaboration, a clear indication of the seriousness of this discovery. Dr. Carter, the gray-haired American admiral, turned to him. "If what you have discovered is indeed a German submarine from World War II, then a logical question arises. What is it doing so far from a known war zone?" The Russian rear admiral, sitting opposite, nodded slowly. More importantly, what could she carry to justify such a risky expedition? Finding answers to these unsettling questions is the real goal of the upcoming dangerous expedition to the Arctic desert. A few days later, a cargo helicopter landed heavily in an area that had been hastily cleared of snow. The pilot indicated that he would not wait. The weather was deteriorating rapidly. They landed just 2 kilometers from the submarine's intended location. The distance may seem short, but in the conditions of the Arctic blizzard, every step is extremely difficult. Even before arriving at the site, expedition biologist Helena Brooks noticed something odd. In the deserted and seemingly uninhabitable Arctic region, they often appear from time to time in the ice and snow as vague silhouettes. These are Arctic wolves. There were at least a dozen people gliding silently along the snow hill. They kept their distance, neither approaching nor retreating. "William, this is not normal," Helena shouted over the howling wind. "Wolves would never do this to humans. They had to attack or flee." Carter nodded, but didn't take this strange phenomenon seriously. Now he had only one thing to worry about, the object under the ice. After 4 hours of arduous journey, they arrived at the predetermined coordinates. The wind, as if obeying a command, suddenly died down. There was an eerie silence around them, broken only by the sound of their heavy breathing. The wolves paused along the perimeter, forming a nearly perfect circle. The yellow eyes keep watching people's every move, like a sentry on duty, said a security expert, nervously gripping his machine gun. Using portable radar, the team quickly identified the submarine's exact location and began excavation. The ice melted unexpectedly easily, as if the Arctic itself was helping them uncover its secrets. After 8 hours of continuous work, they uncovered part of the body, and all doubts were dispelled. Before them was the U-boot Type 9, one of the Third Reich's most advanced submarines. But what shocked them most was the safety of the ship. There is no visible damage to the casing and no signs of corrosion. The ship looked as if it had sunk not during World War II but several years earlier. This goes against all laws of nature. By the end of the second day, they had cleared the main entry hatch. The critical moment has arrived. Carter, wearing protective clothing, slowly opened the heavy metal door with the help of experts. The dead silence of the Arctic desert was broken by a long creaking of the strained hinges. The wolves, who had been watching all this motionlessly, raised their mouths at the same time and let out a long howl. Inside the submarine, they saw a horrifying scene. The entire crew, about 50 people, were at their posts. But they were all dead. Carter had seen many shipwrecks and deaths, but nothing like this. The sailors' bodies had not decomposed and had not come into contact with seawater or animals. They looked as if they had died instantly, frozen forever in their final motion. One officer froze and raised his pencil to the magazine. The other raised the cup to his lips. The third reached for the radio. "Oh my God," Helena whispered, examining the nearest body. "They're like museum pieces." "But this is impossible. No conditions known to science can preserve organic matter like this." Carter walked silently towards the captain's room. He knew that if they wanted to understand what had happened to the ship, all the answers would be found there. The captain's cabin was locked from the inside. We had to use special equipment to open the door without damaging the items in the room. The submarine's captain, a haggard-looking middle-aged officer, sat at the table. The ship's log lay open before him, and his hand was clenched around a Luger. A bullet to the temple. He was the only crew member who died not from mysterious causes but by his own hands. Carter carefully removed the magazine. Although he was wearing thermal clothing, he felt a cold sweat running down his back. He was fluent in German, a necessity for his profession. The captain's final notes finally revealed the nightmarish truth. April 28, 1945. We received the order directly from Berlin. Operation Ragnarok. Highest priority coding. No one except me knows the true purpose of our mission. The crew is informed that we are evacuating important scientists and documents. The shipment will arrive during the night. April 29, 1945. The shipment is delivered. 6 containers with biological material from Laboratory 1. Professor Strauss insists on personal accompaniment. According to the instructions, these supplies must be delivered to a secret base in Antarctica. This will be our last weapon of revenge in the event of an Allied victory. May 2, 1945. Radio message from headquarters. Berlin has fallen. The Führer is dead. But the order still stands. We are the last hope of the Reich. May 5, 1945. Professor Strauss is becoming increasingly nervous. Locked in the laboratory for hours. Something is not going as planned. May 7, 1945. Disaster. Strauss reports that one of the containers is unstable. I tried to fix some of the problems, but, God, What have I done? I have doomed the entire crew by agreeing to this mission. The effect was immediate. The men froze. No convulsions, no pain. They were like wax figures, frozen forever. I sealed my cabin and turned on the automatic ventilation system. But it was only a delay. This cargo is too dangerous to fall into anyone's hands. I pray that the Arctic ice will bury this submarine and all its deadly contents forever. Lord, please forgive us. Carter slowly closed the magazine and looked at Helena, who stood near. There was an understanding fear in her eyes. We need to evacuate immediately and block this ship forever, he said firmly. The Nazi biological weapon here is clearly still deadly even 8 years later. From what we have seen, if this horrific substance were released, it would be capable of killing millions of people on Earth instantly. The security expert contacted command and transmitted the key threat code. Within an hour, 3 military helicopters appeared over the excavation site with a team of scientists wearing the highest level of protective clothing. The operation to protect the submarine has begun. The work continued for 3 days without a break. The ship was thoroughly inspected and any containers of biological materials found were sealed and left on board. Any attempt to transport them could have resulted in unpredictable consequences. The entire area was declared a closed zone and is monitored 24 hours a day from space and automatic surveillance stations. On the last day, when the main work was finally completed, Helena once again directed Carter's attention to the wolves, who never left the perimeter. You know, William, she mused, I have a theory. These wolves, they've been guarding this place for decades. Somehow they sense the danger beneath the ice and instinctively prevent other animals from approaching. Moreover, it is likely to scare away anyone who accidentally wanders into these areas. Carter looked closely at the nearest wolf, a large male with a gray muzzle. The animal looked him in the eye calmly, and there was no fear or aggression in its yellow eyes, only some ancient, incomprehensible wisdom. Do you think this is possible? He asked softly. There are many examples in nature of animals sensing danger earlier than humans. Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. Why shouldn't they sense biological threats? Helena shrugged. These wolves can pass this knowledge from generation to generation. Keep a distance from dangerous places, but don't allow any creatures to get close here. When the equipment was loaded and the whole team was ready to set out, Carter stopped at the edge of the camp. The wolves slowly dispersed and took up their usual positions where the deadly submarines of the Third Reich were reliably hidden under a layer of refreezing ice. Thank you, Carter said softly. Not to anyone in particular, just looking at the endless cold desert. In response, the gray-haired leader turned his head and seemed to bow slightly, as if accepting. Thanks. Then he let out a low howl, and the rest of the pack joined in. Voice as old as the earth itself echoes across the silent ice, reminding us that sometimes humanity's most reliable guardians are not people but creatures we naively believe are primitive and irrational. Carter had heard the long-lasting wolf howl for a long time, even when helicopters rose above the white desert, carrying researchers away from one of the most terrible secrets of the last century. It was only because of an amazing coincidence of circumstances and the silent wolf guards that this secret did not become a terrible nightmare of the 21st century.